Block 8, Pax Americana, Section 1, Post-War America, with a section beginning Suburbs. For all of American history, people pretty much lived in 3 different places. You lived out on a farm, you lived in a city, or you lived in a small town. Post-war America becomes increasingly defined by its suburbs. With people getting wealthier, people driving more cars, and with thousands more miles of highways being built, people looked to move out of the city centers. The GI Bill not only helped people go to college, but the GI Bill also provided veterans with low-cost loans for new houses. So the idea that everyone should own their own little house with their own little piece of land outside of the cities became more and more popular. By the end of the 1950s, the entire American dream had almost changed definition. That by the end of the 1950s, the American dream starts to become defined by owning your own house out in the suburbs. Suburban houses were close together, single-family occupied, with a small yard. They were mass-produced, could be put up very quickly and very cheaply. Living out in the suburbs meant that every family who lived out there needed a car, and sometimes if you had several children, you needed 2, or if your wife had, a job, you would need 2 cars. Suburbanization had its critics very quickly. Critics called it stifling, critics called it conformist. Critics, the houses all pretty much look the same. They have the same size, they have the same yard, they have the same driveway, and similar cars are parked out front. Critics say it's stifling, it's conformist, it takes away from the fabric of urban neighborhoods. But for millions of Americans who had grown up in crowded cities and ethnic neighborhoods, this was the definition of freedom. It was a dream come true. And millions of Americans took the opportunity in the 1950s to get in their cars, take the highways out, and buy their own houses for they and their families to live in out in the suburbs. So there's a lot of pull factors. There's a lot of factors pulling people out of American cities. Homes are cheap, cars are plentiful, gas is inexpensive, there's more highways, there's a lot of things pulling people out. And one of the places that they were pulled, this is an overhead view of one of the first American suburban developments called Levittown, built by the architect William Levitt. These massive communities were designed for returning veterans and their new families. They offered all the advantages and amenities of suburban life, and they're sold. A house to yourself, a yard to yourself, a place where no one, is stomping on, the apartment above you, or yelling up from the apartment below you, or the strange smell from the lady next door wafting in from the apartment next to you. Production was modeled in an industrial manner, and thousands of identical homes were produced. They came standard with a white picket fence, a green lawn, a modern kitchen with new appliances. In William Levitt's town, which he named Levittown, how do you like that? March of 1947, they opened up, and within the first 3 hours, 1,400 homes had been bought. The FHA, the Federal Housing Administration, these loans were guaranteed by the government. The government said that qualified veterans, which was pretty much anybody who had fought in the war, could receive housing for a fraction of what it cost to rent. So here's another pull factor, that it's cheaper to own your house than it is to rent your apartment in the city. And the government would pick up the remainder of the tab. So if you're paying William Levitt to build you a house, you're paying William Levitt part of the money for the house, and the government is paying William Levitt for part of the money in the house. A veteran could get a house for about $57, $60 a month, which was cheap even for the late 1940s. I mean, a house for less than $60 a month, with a lawn and new appliances and a new efficient heating system is a dream come true for millions upon millions of Americans. Those are the pull factors. There are push factors also, and this is a little bit darker. There are push factors. Here's, a typical suburban house. It's a small little house, nothing that, we would consider to be a monstrous house today, and here's just an average guy with his average wife and his average house, and they're very average-looking children living out in the suburbs outside of some city. There's lots of pull factors, but there's push factors also. And like we said, the push factors are a little darker in their tone. Who's moving out of the cities? White people. White people are moving out of the cities by the millions. And they are, critics say that they are only moving out of the cities because black people are moving into the cities. And this fact that white people were fleeing city centers while black people were moving in got the term white flight. That white people are flying away from city centers as black families and black people moved in. You know, well, there goes the neighborhood kind of feeling that, you know, as soon as one black family moved onto the city block, all the white families within a year or two would have decamped and gone to the suburbs. Is there truth in this? Absolutely, there's truth in this. There are push factors and there are pull factors leading people out of American cities. So this is let's start by a look at the map. This is a map of the city of St. Louis. And you can see here's the city center. And the dark colors represent an increase in the black population and a decrease in the white population. And the light colors show where all these white people moved to. They moved to suburban areas outside the city of St. Louis. Downtown St. Louis, for the most part, became almost entirely black American city. Critics argue that people were fleeing to the suburbs anyway, but people say that people like William Levitt, you know, encouraged racism in Americans through their advertising. William Levitt promised that if you moved into Levittown, you could live in an all-white section. You wouldn't have to have any, you know, black people living around you in your neighborhood if you moved into William Levitt's development. This was not illegal. As of today, that's illegal. You can't have a development and say, no black people allowed in this development. Or you can't sell it and say, if you move to this development, you can live without any Hispanic people or without any white people or without any... But that was not illegal in 1947. It was not illegal in 1947 because it was seen as a private transaction. One private company is selling houses to another private company, and they can be racist in their private dealings if they want to be. The effect on the suburbs is obviously profound, and the effects on American cities is equally profound. The black Americans moving in were less well educated. They largely came from the South. They were not used to urban life. They're limited and that they were denied equal opportunity jobs. And all of these things created poverty and created ghettos in Americans' center cities. Limited economic success led to falling tax revenues. Falling tax revenues led to less city services. At the same time, as poverty grows, you need more social services. But a falling tax base means that you can afford less social services. The situation became a negative feedback loop. Anyone, by the 1950s, anyone, white and black, that can afford to get out of American inner cities are getting out of American inner cities. We all have this kind of cultural, when you mention, you know, Harlem, I mean, not so much anymore because Harlem's had this big renaissance. But, you know, you think of American center cities and you think of places that, you know, you might not want to be after the sun goes down. That was a phenomenon of the 1950s. The white ethnic neighborhoods were replaced by black neighborhoods, and for various reasons, these black neighborhoods were not as economically successful as the ethnic white neighborhoods that they replaced. And American center cities began to be centers not of economic activity and social cohesion, but of economic hopelessness and social problems.